Religious freedom and the separation of church and state are two of the most important rights fought for during the Revolutionary era. Additionally, rigorous debate concerning religious freedom and the separation of church and state took place from all avenues of clergy and politics. The rights of the individual to worship freely in the manner they chose came under great persecution, and many who preached were beaten and publicly ridiculed throughout the colonies. Through their steadfastness and devotion to religious rights, these men played a vital role in ensuring the Constitution protected the freedom to worship without government involvement. Thus, Americans enjoy a country where they worship where they choose, follow the religious doctrine they choose, and establish churches without persecution from government or other churches. Religious dissension began because of the transformation of thought from the Great Awakening. Out of the Great Awakening grew a belief of individual religious freedom and a separation of church and state. New Lights saw the Church of England as tyrannical, and as Frank Lambert states, they resented state-enforced religious regulation. In a letter from a gentleman at a distance to his friend in a court, the gentleman viewed the loss of freedom due to the taxation on individuals in support of their church a larger issue than slavery. While Reform thought spread throughout all of the colonies, the main focus of dissension grew out of two primary areas, New England and Virginia, both known for their political power in opposition to the tyrannical control of King George III. Dissenters in the North, such as John Witherspoon, William Tennant, John Livingston, and Ezra Stiles, used political channels, pamphleteering, and influential preaching to transform the view of their congregations and students. John Witherspoon played a key role in the life and influence of James Madison, the father of the Constitution. Nicholas Miller wrote, "The lives of Witherspoon and Madison overlap at some key junctures in both revolutionary American history as well as church and state development." Witherspoon taught Madison at Princeton, and both were present and involved in the writing of the Constitution. As Miller states, the Presbyterian Constitution that Witherspoon wrote in parallel with Madison's writing of the U.S. Constitution reflects the same views on religious freedom, and the Presbyterian document tells us as much, if not more, about the climate of church-state thought in America of the day. Dissension in Virginia grew from great orators and preachers such as Samuel Davies, a Presbyterian preacher in Hanover County, and Joseph, Elijah, and Lewis Craig, brothers and Baptist ministers who suffered extreme persecution from the Anglican Church and the state government for preaching the gospel throughout Virginia. As Robert Semple shares, the Baptists originated in New England through the preaching of revivalist George Whitefield, and later became separatist Baptists who built Sandy Creek Church in Guilford County, North Carolina, under the pastoral care of Shubal Stearns. Through there, the Baptist Church spread into adjacent states, including Virginia, where Baptists like Robert Semple states they were viewed by men in power as beneath their notice. None, they said, but the weak and wicked join them. Let them alone. They will soon fall out among themselves and come to nothing. For Samuel Davies, historians give him credit for his influence on Patrick Henry, whose "Give Me Liberty or Give Me Death" followed the style of Davies, who was known for his thought-provoking sermons with themes of individual freedom as well as appealing to the blacks. Unlike the Baptists, the Davies and other Presbyterians of Virginia generally avoided problems with authorities by following the tenets of the Act of Toleration as well as their status as members of a sanctioned church in England. Other influential dissenters outside of New England and Virginia played important roles in disestablishment. William Tennant, a preacher of an independent church in South Carolina and leader of the South Carolina Dissenters, wrote a letter to the House of Assembly in Charlestown, January 11, 1777, where he gives a pointed argument that reads much like a sermon on why he opposes religious establishments who push them to choose personal liberty, his first and most crucial point for the disestablishment. His letter provides a great example of the climate throughout the other colonies after the signing of the Declaration of Independence. Virginia dissenters fell under severe persecution during the Great Awakening. legal and physical persecution became commonplace amongst Baptist ministers, who often preached without licensure from the Virginia court in Williamsburg due to their practices of allowing anyone who felt led by the Holy Spirit to preach, regardless of the education and the ability to read and write. When they sought the protection under the Act of Toleration, they experienced many hardships. As Womel notes, these hardships including obtaining the license from the Williamsburg court that convened twice per year and obtaining orthodoxy from an Anglican minister within the meaning of the Anglican 39 Articles. When they obtained a license, they used it to their advantage to win court cases. Womel gives an account of James Ireland, a licensed Baptist who won a court case when the lawyers threatened the authorities for illegally prosecuting Ireland by virtue of the Act of Toleration. As time passed and individual liberties gained popularity, Baptists took advantage of injecting arguments for religious freedom in political pamphlets addressed to the government. Along with legal persecution, physical persecution plagued dissenters in Virginia. John Waller, in August 1771, came under attack while preaching. Morgan Edwards gives the account where he states, after that, the clerk, Buckner, pulled him down and dragged him to the sheriff, who stood at a distance. The sheriff immediately received him and whipped him in so violent manner, without the ceremony of a trial, that poor Waller was presently in a gore of blood, and will carry the scars to his grave. As Augusta states, after the beating, Waller, who had been known in his younger pre-conversion days as Swearing Jack, remounted the stage to preach and in the process created additional interest in his story, continuing a pattern of dissenters using persecution as part of their witness and to evangelical purposes. Regardless of the persecution, the gospel spread like wildfire throughout the colonies, including Virginia. Samuel Davies, in a letter to Reverend Joseph Bellamy, gave an account of the dissenters in Virginia, where he stated, "And here, sir, it may be proper to observe that when in the narrative I speak of the increase of dissenter in these parts with an air of satisfaction, I do not boast of them as mere captures from the Church of England, but as hopefully sincere proselytes to living religion, or at least as lying open to conviction and in the way of more profitable means." Dissenters played important roles in the various bills and amendments written in the U.S. Constitution. As mentioned earlier, John Witherspoon's influence on James Madison can be seen when comparing the Constitution with the Presbyterian Constitution. Likewise, dissenters expressed their views on various state bills and declarations written by America's founders. The Assessment Bill, a bill that proposed that citizens pay a moderate tax annually for the support of a Christian church, a choice given to the citizen for the church of their choosing, gained strong opposition from dissenters, especially the Hanover Presbytery and Baptist. Both produced petitions in opposition. Patrick Henry, an Anglican who supported dissenters, felt a tax was warranted despite the stiff opposition. As Carl Espick states, dissenters used James Madison to argue their view. In Madison's To the Honorable and General Assembly of the Commonwealth of Virginia, a memorial and remonstrance, Madison built on the social contract framework supplied by John Locke, where he states, "Religion is the duty which we owe to our Creator and the manner of discharging it. It can be directed only by reason and conviction, but not by force." As Esbeck notes, Madison's definition of religion was taken from the petition of the Hanover Presbytery of October 24, 1776, and gives evidence of the influence of dissenters to the founders. Thomas Jefferson and James Madison shared a responsibility for the establishment of religious freedom in Virginia, and dissenter influence can be noted throughout the landmark document. As Ralph Ketchum states of Thomas Jefferson's writing of the Act, drafting what ultimately became the Virginia Act for establishing religious freedom depended intellectually on much of the same broadened Enlightenment philosophy that Madison had absorbed, though with less emphasis on the religion-validating Scottish common sense thought Madison had learned at Princeton and in his postgraduate study. The draft failed on its first attempt in 1779, but as religious freedom gained broad approval, Madison resubmitted the bill. Ketchum states, Though there was warm opposition in the lower house, the bill passed essentially unchanged on December 17, 1785. Article 16 of the Virginia Declaration of Rights entitled Virginians to the free exercise of religion and stands as the framework of the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment of the Constitution. Article 16 of Virginia Declaration of Rights states that religion, or the duty which we owe to our Creator and the manner of discharging it, can be directed by reason and conviction, not by force or violence, and therefore all men are equally entitled to the free exercise of religion according to the dictates of conscience, and that it is the mutual duty of all to practice Christian forbearance, love, and charity towards each other. As Ketchum explains, drafted principally by the elder George Mason rather than the young James Madison, the final version, as amended, was sent to Philadelphia and published throughout the colonies and around the world. Madison drafted Article 16, and as Ketchum states, George Bancroft called Madison's amendment of the Religious Liberty Clause the first achievement of the wisest civilian in Virginia. Through their steadfastness and devotion to religious rights, Dissenters played a vital role in ensuring the Constitution protected the freedom of worship without government involvement. Influential preachers such as John Witherspoon and Samuel Davies played important roles in planting the views of religious freedom in some of America's most important founders. By petitions, sermons, and pamphleteering, Presbyterian and Baptist dissenters spread the gospel while stressing the importance of religious liberty and the disestablishment of the Church of England. Today, Americans worship freely under protection of the First Amendment of the Constitution, thanks to the dedication and service of the dissenters of colonial America.